Well, hello everyone. My name's Sam the Geek, and today I want to talk about something that's just been bugging the heck out of me. I remember a video game press of the early 2000s, of the mid 2000s, that was incredibly critical of Jack Thompson. And now I see a video game press today that is extremely similar to Jack Thompson in the terms of opinion. Now, if you don't know who Jack Thompson is, Jack Thompson was one of the very first major lawyers to come out against video games for causing violence. But it wasn't just causing violence. It was causing violence and, you know, saying that they deteriorate the morality of killing someone, causing racism and misogyny, etc., etc. People often forget those parts, but I'll tell you why in a bit. Throughout this year, we've seen tons of articles and videos and stuff about how evil video games are starting to become. Supposedly, video games are now responsible for many of the sexist attitudes in today's society. Video games are responsible for racism. Video games that are violent. They haven't said, a lot of the press hasn't said that the video games are responsible for violence, but they have stated that the violence has just become too much. There's just too much violence. They can't take it anymore. It's making them depressed and hate their jobs, etc. Well, it's just daunting to see this 180 happen in just a couple of years. And I wouldn't be surprised if video games in the next couple of years, video game journalists completely agree with Jack Thompson and start blaming violence for it as well. And also, video game journalists seem to think that they know how to raise other people's kids. And that's one thing that really, really bugs me. Because, for many reasons, a lot of them are hypocrites. I see all these articles, I sold too many copies of Grand Theft Auto 5 to uninformed parents. I sold too many, I've heard too many kids on Grand Theft Auto 5 online. As if these are justifiable articles. Of course they're only meant for view bait. But still, the fact that they exist give ammo to other news outlets and the mainstream media to actually use that against video games. And it's just like, first off, don't act like many of you had not played a violent video game behind your parents' back without their knowledge. Second off, who are you to tell parents that they're uninformed or that they don't know any better, etc.? You don't know that kid's life. You don't know if they're mentally prepared or not to handle Grand Theft Auto 5. You don't know. You are not a child psychiatrist, and if you are selling them the game, you are obligated, if you work at GameStop, to read the back of the box for them anyway. And, you know, a lot of people don't care. And don't act like you haven't seen an R-rated movie when you were a child. Don't act like you didn't sneak behind your parents' back and play Mortal Kombat or the original Grand Theft Autos. I did. My parents were very strict about the ESRB. They didn't let me purchase myself without, I've purchased games without them knowing. I've gone behind their back. But they didn't let me purchase myself with their knowledge, a video game with an M rating on it until I was 16 years old. And that was Gears of War. Seriously. And I've played many rated M games behind their back without their knowledge. Like Fallout, the first two Fallouts. I played that when I was a kid. I played Turok. I played Mortal Kombat. A lot. They never knew. So don't act like the kid not getting it for himself is going to prevent them. And don't act like most parents even watch what their children play. I mean, honestly, a lot of them don't. Even if they enforced the ESRB, how would they know what their kid's playing? A lot of them, for a lot of kids and a lot of people, games are an isolating experience. The television is no longer in the living room. It's in the bedroom. And in the bedroom, the kid can just sit all day and play video games. And that what happened not recently, in the 90s. I knew people who had the extra TV in their room in the 90s, the smaller one that they would play games on. And they weren't even rich or anything. It's just a broken down or older television that the family owned in the past, put in the kids' room to entertain it, because a lot of parents use video games and movies as babysitting. That's what they do. And it's commonplace, and a lot of people do it. A lot of people did it then, a lot of people do it now. So it's just shocking to me that that game journalists who grew up in this time period, who grew up with video games, really think that they can control, that parents can control kids, and that they know what's best for other people's kids. And we get to more arguments. We see Colorado State University. Students from there in the sociology department, I believe, trying to break down all the bad things in Grand Theft Auto 5. Trying to break down all the sexism, all the misogyny, all the racism. And when we all know that Grand Theft Auto 5 is a satirical game. It is a game that pokes fun at all of these things. I mean, dying in the game is satirical when they just put wasted on the screen. Nothing in that game is serious. However, everyone in the video game industry and in the mainstream industry, in the mainstream media, treat it as if it is the most serious piece of media ever made. And that goes the same with the video game industry. I'm sorry, but all these articles about how I'm tired of killing, and GTA is so racist, blah, blah, blah. If you actually sat down and listened to the radio and understood that almost the entire game is sarcastic, I don't know how anyone could play this game and take it seriously. And take it as a serious, or like an instruction manual to how people treat people. The whole game is mocking society from every little point of view. I mean, if you pull out a rocket and shoot it at Michael's house in the game, he literally calls you on the phone and tells you to stop shooting rockets at his house. There is nothing in that game that spoke to me as a serious piece of, art. I mean, not art, but you know what I mean. Like, as a serious, I don't know how to explain it. It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but Call of Duty is more offensive than Grand Theft Auto, in my opinion. Everything in that game is supposed to be a joke. And it blows my mind that we now live in a humorless society. We live in a society where everything needs to be broken down. And there's an old analogy that fits this situation perfectly. Humor is like a frog. And if you dissect a frog, the more you dissect it, the less interesting it becomes, and the frog dies because of it. And that's what's happening here. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a great game. And instead of writing articles about how misogynistic or sexist it is, you should write articles about how Rockstar was completely unprepared for the launch of the online system, and still people are having problems with it. And how, it was one of the sloppiest launches of an online service I've ever seen, and how they expect microtransactions and purposely increase the prices of a lot of the equipment in the game and lock a lot of equipment out of the game unless you purchase it. Those are things that are valid that you could complain about Grand Theft Auto. Not about the content that is obviously satirical, that you're taking way too seriously, or about, any of the themes, especially since the entire industry and many of these same writers criticized and got a person disbarred for having similar opinions. Samuel out.